Alrighty, so this is going to be the first video I kind of do that discusses a little bit of atheism, or at least responding to Christian apologists. So for those that subscribe to me back when I was on everything else there, you'll finally get a little bit of a response that way. But hopefully in the future there'll be some more. Like I plan on doing some other stuff, atheism related. But let's jump into the video here.
Back in January, I posted a video about women in Indonesia being trained by the Sharia police to flog other women. I pointed out how strange it is that Western feminists and social justice warriors rarely seem to have any problem with what happens in the Muslim world, even though the problems women face in the Muslim world are typically far worse than the problems women face in the West.
So there's probably plenty of people that are talking about it. Like the one example he brings up here of feminists not talking about shit here, like with the driving, he'll get through later. I found that, yeah, there's plenty of people talking about it for years in this situation. So there's probably plenty of people talking about this situation. Now, not everybody's aware of everything there, but what he's going to get at here is what we call the fallacy of relative privation, right? Where he's going to say, oh, don't complain about the stuff here around you because it's so much worse over here. It's like, no, we can handle both those things, or the best we can. Now we have more control of this stuff in our country than what we do in other countries, but that doesn't mean we can't do things that help those people out that are in those countries trying to change things. Yeah, there's plenty of it here, and it's just like, oh, I didn't see it, so it's not really happening. It's I don't know if I want to say dishonest, but it's disingenuous to treat your, what this video is the proposed interlocutors this way.
The obvious defense of this hypocrisy would be, well, David, we can't focus on the Muslim world because we're not in the Muslim world. We can't change the Muslim world. All we can change are the countries we're in. That's why we focus almost exclusively on the problems women face in the West. But this is total nonsense. Muslim countries often do respond to outside pressure.
So, again, that's not the argument people are making, right? We can focus on these things. We can have groups and aid the people over there that are trying to do things. We can do campaigns. Like, there's campaigns all the time from feminists and stuff about women being imprisoned for protesting, things like that. Like the in Iran, the taking the hijab off, right? The protests and stuff. That's covered pretty much in showing support for the women that are doing that. So it's happening here, but like we have more control over what can be done here, and there's only so much we could do about over there, right? Now, one of the things we can do is, elect leaders that are going to put pressure on our allies to change things, right? So he's going to bring up Saudi Arabia here next.
Saudi government didn't suddenly change its view of women and then decide to give women the right to drive. Women not being allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia was a source of constant embarrassment for the country. The world made fun of Saudi Arabia. Saudi leaders don't like being embarrassed, so they eventually changed. They would have changed much sooner if the criticism had been more relentless.
All right, that's bullshit, right? So they didn't change that because there was no embarrassment from outside the country, right? There was, I looked into this, there's internal protests for 30 years, right? So there's 1990, there's a big protest. Several throughout the early 2000s, including 2011, which was the Women to Drive campaign or something like that was campaign. I could probably pull it up and find the exact thing, but it's not super important what the name of the campaign was here. But there was plenty of feminists within Saudi Arabia and women that were pushing to drive and challenging things, going to jail for these changes, right? And bringing attention to it. And in 2011, I think was the music video that went big around there. Yeah, there's big internal protests. And you know what? He's not going to cover at all in this video. Those women are still on trial for crimes that stood up to the Saudi government, right? That's from the most recent information, which is about a year ago, right? They're still on trial. I haven't seen any um, final. Oh, why am I drawing a blank on the term? Judgment, final judgment on what's going to happen to them. But yeah, they've been in prison since, so they changed in what, 2018, 2017, right about there change. But in 2011, there was the music video protest that got worldwide notice, and there was a big solidarity movement and push there that was led, including by people like Nancy Pelosi, bringing attention to the driving thing because of what this internal protest brought out. So it's not, we just leaned on stuff there and it changed, right? The big one recently that changed a lot of stuff for, which I'll bring up later again in more depth, is the Uganda Kill All Gays bill from 2013. That had a big international outcry that managed to stop the killing part, although they still got life in prison. But that bill has resurfaced again to kill the gays in Uganda. And it's, I don't know what Acts17Apologetics' real name is here. Is it Mike? I think he said earlier. I don't want to, use the wrong name. But that was pushed by evangelical Christians, organizations, and people that went over there to push to put that there. Yeah. Yeah, AI. Yeah, Amnesty International. Yeah, so there's organizations that push for these things. But he's just not paying attention to that at all.
So the question remains, why do social justice warriors in the West complain about perceived injustices in the West while ignoring or sometimes even defending far greater injustices in other parts of the world?
All right, I'm going to need examples of defending those injustices, right? By social justice warriors, right? That's not the case, and it's not generally what's happening. Now, there's some fringe things like tankies that'll, side with North Korea and China and all the shit they do. But that's a relatively minor portion that push that kind of stuff. And I love how he downplays and kind of whitewashes stuff around here. It's just perceived injustice instead of things there. Like, I mean, gay marriage was a thing, we've only got, 7 years ago. Now we got the trans debates coming up huge here. I mean, those aren't just perceived injustices. Those are actual challenges to those people's rights that they got to stand up and fight for.
I was watching an interview with Douglas Murray, and he has a theory about that. I'm going to share some clips, and you can tell me what you think. Douglas Murray is an atheist, but unlike many of the atheists you hear from, Murray acknowledges how Christianity has shaped Western beliefs and values. Murray is also openly gay, so keep that in mind as he discusses the Chick-fil-A controversy.
Yay, the gay friend argument against here, right? And nobody's going to deny that Christianity has had an influence on the Western civilization. Nobody does that, right? There's challenges to what was good about it and whether or not it should stick around from atheist circles, but it's not like, there's no influence, right? We're well aware of the influence. And some people in the atheist community, and I'll say this right here as a fair criticism against it, push bad historical stuff, like the Draper conflict, or the Draper-White conflict thesis, which was debunked about 70 years ago in terms of the constant pushback between religion and science, right? It wasn't a thing, generally speaking. They have a handful of examples that they wanna push and pull forward, and the same examples you're always going to hear, right? You're going to hear Bruno, Giordano Bruno, Galileo, and then, which was after the Dark Ages, so it wasn't the church slowing down progress in science and anything that other things from a conflict. When we're talking about Renaissance and post-Reformation instances, and then they go back maybe to who's the woman philosopher in ancient Greece that they bring up, Hypatia. They'll bring that stuff in here, and that was I think a couple centuries before the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So it's like those are the handful of examples they have at religion, especially Christianity, being against science, right? Which is not the case. And so, hey, atheist movement, drop that shit. Let's get our act together and be historical, be factual, be the things that we say we want.
The video is about the larger issue of the mentality of social justice warriors. Chick-fil-A is just an example Murray uses. He begins with the most glaring feature of Western social justice warriors.
It's not enough that they believe something. You have to believe it too. I wrote in The Spectator recently about it's a minor thing, but there's a restaurant in America called Chick-fil-A.
Yes, I saw that article.
Chick-fil-A, some of the people, family, it's a Christian family business.
I know I have viewers all over the...
So the Chick-fil-A protests weren't about, oh, we just disagree with you or anything there. It was because they were actively funding anti-LGBTQ organizations, including organizations that were pushing back against gay marriage, right? So that's where the outrage was. It wasn't just oh, we believe different things. Now, part of that happens in other things, but I mean, I think that would be generally a good thing, right? You don't want Nazis running around being things like, oh, we can't oppose the Nazis. They just disagree with us. It's not good enough that the Nazis don't agree with us. We got to get rid of the Nazis, right? And that's kind of the reductio ad absurdum to the argument he's making here and trying to shut down this opposition. All right, have a good one, Elhana.
Planet. So, in case you're from a country that doesn't have Chick-fil-A, I'll note that Chick-fil-A is a fast food chain that makes really, really good chicken sandwiches. Anytime I say to my kids, I'm going out, do you want me to grab you something? They say Chick-fil-A. But Chick-fil-A is owned by a Christian family. They close all their restaurants on Sundays. And the family has made some controversial decisions that have made their business a target.
Third largest.
Why are you whitewashing this A17A? Huh? Why are you whitewashing what's going on? They've donated millions of dollars. Both the Chick-fil-A charitable organization and the owner's charitable organization to anti-LGBTQ causes. So this isn't just, oh, they said some things that are upsetting and so they're freaking out and all that other stuff. It's like, no, that's not it. And two, the backlash hasn't seemed to work. Chick-fil-A has continued to grow, at least until recently, expand quite frequently here. And they're approaching, I think, the third largest fast food chain in the country, right? Despite all these protests and boycotts.
This chain restaurant in America opened for the first time in the UK in October, and announced shortly afterwards that it's closing because of protests by local self-appointed gay activists. Because Chick-fil-A in America, the Christian family who found it, gave donations about 10 years ago to a family-oriented charities, which included opposition to gay marriage and so on and so forth.
So, in the past, Chick-fil-A gave donations to Christian charities, some of which opposed gay marriage. More recently, Chick-fil-A backed down and said that they would no longer be giving money to Christian charities that oppose gay marriage. But, so the thinking goes, their past donations show their true colors. So, I doubt that protests against the company will stop anytime soon.
Well, I mean, their past statements show their true colors, right? They've said in the past they're going to not donate to these types of groups, and they still donate. I mean, that was before the big outbreak, and they still donated going through, right? So, I mean, they're still doing the donations and all that other stuff.
There are people who want Chick-fil-A canceled completely.
Oh, can we get rid of canceled, please? Like, it made sense in the list here, but it's like almost everything is canceling, right? They obviously can't cancel them, right? No instance of canceling is canceling. They have grown. They've grown. Ugh, what a way to phrase that way. They have grown I don't want to say exponentially, but pretty substantially. Like I said before, they're about the third largest fast food chain in America now. Now they faced some recent things, pressure now that Popeyes does chicken sandwiches. So there's some competition there where, hey, we don't want to lose out business to Popeyes, who isn't anti-LGBTQ. So we're going to revise our policies and our statements to say, hey, we're not, we're going to change things going forward. And that's about all they've said. They haven't said they're not going to donate to those same organizations or similar organizations in the future. They're going to review it every year from all the information I've seen. So that's about the most they've done to change.
And that tells us something about the people who are targeting the company.
It's not enough that these people choose not to eat their chicken nuggets at this place. You mustn't either. And they mustn't serve chicken nuggets, and they must close. Well, even if the family who run Chick-fil-A are the most opposed to gay marriage ever, I still think if some people want to eat their chicken nuggets, they should have the damn right to do so.
This is...
and people have the damn right to protest an organization that continues, or if they continue to donate to these anti-LGBTQ communities, and say, hey, we don't want the homophobes, the transphobes in our community. We're going to protest that they're there, right? That's their right as well, right? It's this whole discussion of rights and all, it's their damn right, go eat all that stuff there and do all that stuff, and you just leave it alone. It's like, if they were supporting Nazi causes, right? Like, and I'll keep bringing this up here, and I'm going to get Godwin's Law in the chat, or in the YouTube comments, I guarantee it. But, like, this is the absurdity of the argument that's being made, right? When you reduce it to, with the reductio ad absurdum, right? You wouldn't hold the same argument for the Nazi chain opening up in your local neighborhood. You'd be against that too, or I would like to think, and you'd go protest them opening up in your community.
Interesting. For decades, various marginalized groups called for tolerance. All we want is to be treated fairly and not to be persecuted. We're not telling you that you have to agree with us. We're just saying that we should all get along in spite of our disagreements. And most people can accept that. Hey.
So what we're going on is not disagreements, and this weird kind of flipping, we want this tolerance, and this view on tolerance. There's a PragerU video I was going to do later here, but I'll have to save it for another stream. Get off here after this video, but this is just, we just disagree and all this other stuff. No, I don't know where he's getting this from, but this caricature of tolerance that the people like these people put forward is just a guise, right? A strategy to try to sneak their shit around, right? And to provide defense, when that's not what was being said.
I disagree with something you believe or something you do, but that doesn't mean that you're not a fellow human being or that you should be attacked. So yes, let's promote tolerance. But as soon as the scales started to favor the previously marginalized groups, their message suddenly changed from, let's all get along even if we disagree with one another, to, if you disagree with us, we will destroy you.
This is the weird Christian persecution complex they have, right? Chick-fil-A has not been harmed by these boycotts. Nothing's been, outside of this one store closing in the UK, right? Because of protests. But I mean, that's what protests are for, right? Against somebody that is going to be anti-LGBTQ in your community, right? You don't want them in that community, get them out, right? Protest them to either change their practices, change their policies, quit donating to these anti-LGBT organizations, and just serve chicken, right? But as long as they keep doing that, they're going to be protested. And obviously, for the most part, it hasn't worked because they've continued to grow.
So what happened to the idea that we should all get along in spite of our differences?
But that instinct is not there. in the social justice warriors of our time. It's not just that they don't want the thing, they don't want you to do the thing either, or to have the right to do the thing, because only by total decimation of their enemies can they win.
Now think about this. Of all the things you could spend your time protesting or complaining about, why is so much energy directed towards Chick-fil-A or Christian cake bakers or Christian florists? Well, they all did something, directly or indirectly, that shows that they disagree with my view. Okay.
I mean, no, this is, like I said, there's not as much energy as he thinks there is being expended on these protests, right? And I find it funny. Like, I assume he's a right-winger, being Christian, really conservative and stuff like that, that, he's not chastising the people that protested, like, Nike, or protested the NFL by burning their shoes or burning the jerseys and stuff. No, it's only the SJWs that are doing it there, and they're the only wrong ones for doing it. And it's not just disagreement, right? So the cake and florist things, although the cake baker won out because that's an artistic thing, and I agree with the artistic expression thing, being a reasonable exception. But the florist one, I don't know what happened with that particular case or how the ruling went there, but it's discrimination, right? So the people with the florist one from the story, I assume it's the same story he's talking about, was a gay man who constantly bought flowers for his gay partner. And when they decided to get married, the florist denied selling him the flowers for the wedding, right? Doing a flower display. Based on discrimination, right? It's those anti-discrimination laws. And so they sued, right? And that's not a huge protest or a huge amount of energy expended by anybody other than the people involved, right? And then maybe some amplification on social media or the news, right?
Okay, but I'm pretty sure there are some worse things going on in the world. Why are you going after Chick-fil-A and that Christian baker and that Christian florist?
How about going back to the...
I mean, this is the fallacy of relative privation, right? We can solve multiple problems at once, right? So don't ignore a certain problem here because there's worse problems over here, right?
Courage issue. Maybe these people are all just incredibly cowardly and lazy. Maybe that's all that's going on. You see, it's quite easy to say, I refuse to eat my chicken nuggets at that place in Reading. That's quite easy. I mean, I've spent all my life ducking eating chicken nuggets in Reading. I can keep doing it if I want.
Maybe the social justice warriors and activists are actually cowards who pick easy targets that are too nice to pose any sort of threat. Protesting Chick-fil-A is probably the safest thing in the world. You'd be in more danger rearranging your sock drawer than protesting Chick-fil-A. So perhaps the protesters are cowards who want to feel good about themselves, who want to feel like they're making a difference, who want to have something to post on Twitter, so they go after the least threatening targets they can find.
I mean, we can go after more than one target. This is the flaw in this whole argument that SJWs are cowards because they won't go out and speak out against the actual issues, and they want these minor inconveniences addressed. It's like we can protest multiple things at once. It's not hard to do.
By focusing on safe targets, they can avoid more serious issues.
If you think that's the main issue in that rights issue, it means, among other things, you can avoid the harder ones. Well, here's a harder one. There are still dozens of countries in the world where it's illegal to be gay. There are still around a dozen countries where you can be executed for being gay. If you're a gay rights activist, mightn't that be a place to start? Mightn't that be one closer to the boat?
But Douglas, those countries are so far away. What can we possibly do? Well, those countries have embassies. Those countries do respond to outside pressure when there is outside pressure, but there is none because social justice warriors are too busy going after Chick-fil-A.
Bullshit. Like I said, we've been talking about this earlier, and it's kind of getting on repeat with me, but yeah, there's plenty of protesting and stuff going there, and plenty of solidarity. So, like his Saudi Arabia example with driving was wrong. There was plenty of push for it outside of here. I brought up the Ugandan bill, right? And I don't know the current status of it, but it was working its way back through an altered version where they could execute homosexuals, right? And there's outrage about that and pushing out there in support for the people within the country making the change, right? There's only so much you can do when you don't live in the country that these things are happening in, right? You can amplify it, you can raise money, you can send all these different things, and there's orgs that do that, right? That explicitly work with international causes, like Elhana in chat was talking about Amnesty International, right? They're involved in all this stuff, right? So they're putting pressure on it. Another way to put pressure on it is to elect leaders that will put pressure on those issues outside of our country and work to end those things, right? Where we as a country, a lot of these things, countries where it's illegal to be gay and stuff like that, are allies, right? A lot of them aren't, but as well. But I mean, there's a good chunk of them that are our allies. Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Well, Turkey's a bit better on the homosexual stuff, so that there's other things. Although it's turning, Erdogan's pushing it more into a theocracy as we go along here, and that's something concerning that's got to be spoken out against. But yeah, but speaking like with Saudi Arabia, we get their oil, so we got to put up with them, unfortunately. So one of the good things to do, policy-wise, was to eventually get off of fossil fuels and turn the oil that way. But I mean, I don't know if that'll change much at all, because we still need them to trade oil on the dollar for to trade it on the dollar to for economic reasons to help prop us up. So while it might help, it still probably wouldn't be enough to change it without actively opposing them and coming to blows with them.
And if you're really serious about standing up for people's rights, you can fly to most of these countries and protest there. They're probably not going to kill you for protesting. They'll most likely take you to the airport and put you on the next plane back home. But by that time, you will have already gained international attention for your cause. Why is that too much work? Not only is it too much work,
I mean, you could very well die in there, and it's not too much work to do it. There's a money issue, right? If you're not part of an organization that deals with it, right? So if you're some fast food worker who wants to protest all this stuff here, you don't have the money to buy the tickets out, several $1,000s to go overseas. There's only so much you can do. And saying that's being a coward or any kind of hypocrisy stuff there, right? I don't know, it's really dumb, this argument.
social justice warriors will even defend those countries. If you go to the Women's March, you'll see speeches about how wonderful Muhammad was for women's rights, even though nearly all of the countries that oppress women most are Muslim countries. Why not protest the treatment of women in the Muslim world?
We do. Plenty of people do, right? Now, what comes with those... Now, I disagree with some of those people that think Islam is very feminist and all that stuff, but that also comes from their interpretation, right? So if we took the same type of interpretation of the Bible that Acts 17 wants us to take of like the Quran and stuff, we'd get just as repressive of a society as how he will paint Islam. Now, that's not a deflection away from the shitty stuff that's going on in Islamic-led countries. That shit should change, and we should put pressure on them to change. We should help those in there, in those countries that are protesting, give them support with what we can. Right? But, I mean, again, those things change because we stuck out and neutered Christianity, and hopefully we can neuter Islam again. But part of the big reason Islam is such fundamentalist as it is in the region is from activities taken by our government especially during the Cold War, where we pushed these fundamentalists because they were anti-communist, and so so they make the bat there. But hey, we spread fundamentalist Islam, around there, or help spread it more than what it was, right? This is the old, they'll take the meme of pre-revolution Iran with post-revolution Iran, and women walking around like a modern world at the time, to now being covered by law and the moral police.
Instead of praising it. Oh, because your perfectly functioning moral compass is sending you after a Christian baker. Again. So, Christian business, easy target. These Christians are too nice to fight back. Oppressive regime, hard target, they might fight back. Which one am I going to protest? If I'm a coward, I'm going after the Christians.
I mean, the only coward in this whole discussion is you, right? We can go after both, and, you know, they do go after both, right? This is just, you know, bullshit from...
But there's another reason social justice warriors and feminists don't focus on the oppression of women or homosexuals or religious minorities in other countries.
It's also, for many individuals, a bit of a hard one. Why? Well, it means you have to make a value judgment. It means you have to say, actually, I think the way we do things in our society is better than the way they do in that society. Well,
that's cultural imperialism.
Deep cultural imperialism. Who are you to say that they shouldn't shove the wall on the gays? And again, much of the lazy, cowardly social justice movements that pretend that they're incredibly brave don't want to get into that.
If we complain about other cultures, then we're saying that our culture is superior to other cultures. But whenever anyone else says that Western culture is superior to some other culture, we call him a racist and a bigot. We don't want to be called racists and bigots.
Nice straw man. This isn't true. Like, there are complaints about the treatments of LGBT people around the world, and there's organizations that do it. This is pretty consistent in how to. So what you're complaining about being called racist, or is in this case Islamophobic, is when you're doing things that treat Islam as a race and not as a, you know, kind of the religion stuff there. And that's where it's get called. So there's some conflation. Now, there are some people that do go a little beyond that and call things Islamophobic that aren't Islamophobic. And sure, that's something we got to change on our side. But generally, yeah, there's plenty of Islamophobia. And then when it's called out, it's like, oh, you can't criticize Islam, you know, otherwise you're Islamophobic. It's like, no, that's not the case. That's not what's being said. It's you being a dingus.
So we'll just keep our mouths closed, even if homosexuals are being executed, even if women are being publicly flogged, even if religious minorities are being horribly oppressed. Whatever else happens, we don't want to be called names. We're the ones who do the name calling. We can't let others call us names.
I mean, but I also hate this with the right wingers, that it's like they only care about this shit when they think they can call out hypocrisy and denigrate other people, and the SJW, quote unquote SJWs, when they want to get things done here, right? Is to try, well, this is worse over in like fallacy of relative privation, right? That's going on here, and it's disingenuous as fuck from these people.
So we'll just focus on railing against a restaurant that serves chicken sandwiches. That'll show them. More cowardice. In the comments, let me know if you agree with Douglas Murray.
I think the cowardice here is on your part, right? Now, being upfront with your beliefs and hiding behind, would facsimile be the right word? Facsimile of your opposition's beliefs, right? To try to claim hypocrisy. It's just dumb, right? If anybody's the coward here, it is you, Acts17. All right, that'll do it for this video, and I'm going to have to end the stream, so thanks everybody for dropping by.